How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. So I want to ask you about prepping, war, politics, anything else that comes up. What caught my eye first was that you're a former special operations guy. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started my military service in the Marine Corps at the tender age of 18. But when I was done there, not that wasn't enough of a challenge. But after I'd gone to college, I wanted a different challenge. And one of the things that was really intriguing to me was the Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations branch of the military. Each branch has their own, but the Army specializes in using that branch. It's been around for over 130 years, and in particular, I really love that they learn to adapt strategies to be able to solve actual real world problems. So after going through all of the training that was required for that, I was deployed. I got the opportunity to go and be involved in humanitarian missions to train other countries. But essentially, the job was, being able to go in and fix a complex problem with a simple solution using local resources to help mitigate human suffering in areas of kinetic operations. And that could mean, when you say kinetic, it could be a war, or it could be a natural disaster that had caused something. But the idea was to be able to create measurable results so that you knew that when you implemented a solution, that you would know very shortly if your solution had worked. So that way you could go back and correct it or continue to apply the necessary resources to help people get back on their feet. Again, mitigate as much human suffering as possible and create a positive flow of structure towards recovery, if you will. And I really enjoyed that. It was one of the things that I was very passionate about, and being able to go to different parts of the world and see different strategies that you could apply. Uh, it was an awesome experience, and when I retired, it was something I looked forward to doing in my civilian life.
So theoretically, if you were to conduct a kinetic operation on the border, the U.S. border, what would that look like?
Are you asking, like, if we were right now? I think it is a kinetic situation on the border,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. Yeah. Um, you mean if we were to apply a solution? So what's
Yeah,
interesting is
yeah.
that a lot of people ask, when they ask what I do, I try to explain it in different terms, and um, you've got a very smart audience, so I'll use this as an example. A lot of times we do what we call as an area study, or a nation study of a country, to decide sort of what they are. Are you a first world nation, a second world nation? Are you a developed nation that is on the rise? Are you on decline, right? And we use many metrics to define that. And what's very interesting to me is that the United States, if I were to take away what I know as meaning it's the United States, right? Didn't label it Texas, didn't label it Arizona. If you just showed me the metrics, the statistics on what's happening in our country, and you realize that Mexico is an asylum friendly state that is not technically in a state of collapse. Now they have their own issues on their northern border, northern states with the cartels, but nonetheless, they are a state that conducts an administrative state that conducts business. They have defined borders. They have a standing military. But when you look at the United States and you see just what's happening on the southern border, with how many millions of people who have crossed over illegally, and again, whatever numbers that the government Biden regime is putting out right now, I know they're not accurate. We know that there are many that have crossed over that have not been counted. But if you were to look at those metrics and see that, you would say that there's no other question that this country is headed into decline and is headed towards a failed state status, which is insane. And then when you attach back our name to it and all of the resources we have, and you realize we have a nuclear arsenal, and we have such a large civilian populace, and we have such an elderly populace dependent on the care of others, and when you add those components with the real world fact that we have wars going on around the world right now, we've depleted a lot of our resources in support of other nations. Um, it's a really, really scary situation for what I would think is the average citizen in this country. I mean, we are essentially a nation that is becoming a failed state very quickly.
It's a pretty good motivation for prepping. Would you say that's part of how prepping has become such a popular trend?
I think prepping has become very popular, partially because of the lockdowns that and the COVID shutdowns that happened pertaining to certain businesses. And what had happened was people, I think, saw how vulnerable our supply chain was. So your food supply chain, we know that there's about 2 weeks worth of food in your local storehouses. So when you talk about limitations on transportation, when you talk about limitations on production, when you talk about those sorts of things, people look at the supply chain a little bit differently. They saw their supermarket shelves bare for the first time, and I think that triggered in the average American who wants to be prepared, who wants to take care of their family, who doesn't want to be at the mercy of the goodwill of the government or the inability of our government to do anything, quite frankly, and to be placed into a priority level of who gets the support and who doesn't. They want to be prepared individually, and I think that sort of triggered this idea, and it put it back into perspective. What exactly are the things that people need to have? Then we just came across the problem of, well, what do we need, and how do we get those things that we need, and are we able to get the right products that would keep my family safe? We're talking about everything from energy and water on down to food and other factors.
Well, the best part, and there are a few things I'm more passionate about than meat. Um, you are off with prepper beef. You're offering sirloin, ribeye, um, and strip steaks, right? Those three.
So we're actually we're actually offering tenderloin. We
Oh
offer
man,
ribeye. We offer New York strip, and then what we call our original beef, which is your sirloin, your picanha, your tri-tip, your brisket.
yep.
We take those and we turn that into what we call our original steak. And so we offer what we are is a company that took a look at the industry out there right now. We are a prepper company, obviously, but the fact is, freeze dried is the way to go in the future, right? It takes out 75% of the weight, which makes it is shelf stable. It's a great way to end starvation in many places around the world where people aren't able to get nutrients because animal proteins are essential, right? And what's out there on the market when you look at it is your options are diced chicken, right? Who knows where that comes from? And then some sort of taco flavored beef porridge because everybody offers beef crumbles. And right now, I can tell you, having gone through the process of having processed over, gosh, 1,000 head of cattle at this point, I've never seen a crumble anywhere on a cow. So I don't know where beef crumbles come from. Uh, and then you're left with, and I'm not knocking it, but really, when you go to Costco and buy your survival pack that they have available, it's rice, it's oatmeal. These are things, you're right, that will maybe allow you to survive. I kind of want us to thrive. This is the idea. So we wanted to take a look at how we could. Why aren't people providing actual hand carved beef?
Mhm.
Something of substance, right? Is it too hard? Is it too expensive? Well, when we did an analysis going just by the weight, when you buy, because a lot of people sell small packages, right? But when you start to add up the weight and the fact that most people have hidden charges like shipping and all that, found that the cost wasn't the issue. When we tested the product, we found that it wasn't. It's not that it's impossible to do, right? It's just that it's hard to do. And the thing is, it's worth it. And so we wanted to shift the paradigm on this idea of what you could have prepared, ready to and stored away, and have a product you could trust. So once we decided what kind of product we wanted to have, then for us, which was beef, right? And we wanted to have not just beef, but we wanted to be able to offer high end beef as well. So if you want to have filet and the apocalypse, or just when power goes out for a while and your frozen freezer beef isn't good after a couple days, we wanted to be able to offer people that option, right? But then we start looking at the supply chain in general, and
Mhm.
again, we talk about those vulnerabilities. More importantly, we talk about what people are now doing to our food chain, right? So not only are they trying to eliminate sources of food around the world, not only has war exacerbated the starvation that we're starting to see in parts of the world because the Ukrainian bread basket is done, rice yields are down this year. But then you turn around and you see that they're trying to push both mRNA technology and other things being injected into animals. They're trying to make Franken beef. They're doing it was their lab grown beef, and I said, I don't know about you, but beef is grown in a pasture, not in a petri dish. Okay,
There we
because
go.
anything, yeah, right. I'm not eating that. And then the eating bugs thing. So
Oh,
we started saying, okay, so we're not solving the problem just by creating a shift in what the quality of product. That isn't enough, right? We want to make sure we have the quality and sustainability of a supply chain. So we took it all the way through. As we call it, we civil affairs it. We went out there and we found the cattle that could meet exactly what we wanted, meaning cattle that was born and bred here in Texas, that was raised right here on Texas grass, and we wanted it to be able to set it aside. It's not injected with anything. We don't add any hormones, anything to it. So we got our beef lined up. Then we got a local processor who could process it in humane way and at the same time give us exactly hand carved beef, because that's what people deserve, right? You can't freeze dry fat. So what we're taking is we are losing a lot of what other people might be giving out to other people. We're using prime cattle. We're using again only the best parts. So yeah, we might be missing out on that beef crumble that other people are finding, but
American cattle though. It's all American
all
livestock.
American, Texas bred, not just American. I mean, our whole company. Again, so I'm 100% combat disabled veteran, so obviously I feel an affinity for my nation. But my brother in arms and my partner in this company is 100% disabled as well. Did his service, and we wanted to continue to serve our country. So it isn't just about providing the product, but again, that supply chain. Our oxygen absorbers come from like Wisconsin. Our Mylar bags are sourced and made in Orlando, Florida. Every part of our supply chain, our boxes are made here locally. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that not only is it a secure supply chain, but it's a localized supply chain and one that supports American jobs. So we think that that's a part of when we talk about, we want people to be prepared. We want people to go to prepperbeef.com and of course buy our product, right? We want them to have this available for their families. But part of our job in making sure that people can be prepared is that we are prepared for these same inevitable things that we know are going to happen, that we can localize and can continue to make our product and provide it to people, even when we inevitably end up in a war with China, when we inevitably have another virus that is released and people are confined, or people are told they need to be confined. We need to be able to continue to produce for people because it's what Americans deserve.
I like this thread of community, localization, and spreading that to the larger community. That seems to really be a part of your mission.
You know, when I first came, I always want to say come back to the States. I've spent much of my life in the States, but the point is that when you look at what your life mission is, you say, I think when we're young men, we sit here and we say, what kind of person are you, right?
Mhm.
Some men take longer. Some boys take longer to become men, but I'd like to think that the good men sit here and are the ones who've made a decision that the things they do in their life, you should profit from your work. You should be a person who is able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. But if you're not doing things to forward humanity, if you're not doing things to forward your country, if you're not doing things to push forward and uplift your community, then you're a man alone on an island, and you're going to die alone on that island. And I knew that early in my life, this was for me, serving my community is just who I am. And my wife jokingly pokes fun at me and says I'm like a broken down Captain America at this point. But I'd like to believe that every aspect of my life people could analyze and say that I've served and I've looked to serve my community. And I see this as just a further extension of that. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm not special. There are so many people out there doing that, but I still think it's a sense of duty and and it gives me a great sense of purpose. And I do draw great satisfaction from attempting to be the best man in American I can be. But I think it's also, again, it's my responsibility as a person to do that. And as a veteran, especially, it's my responsibility. And everyone always says that veterans take forward this work ethic with them. Um, I think one thing that's lost is the ingenuity that military members are required to have. People who've had to deploy, people who've had to lead other soldiers or other Marines, airmen. I'm sorry, not to exclude any other services, but the
Mhm.
point is when you've been put in positions of leadership, and when you have a mission that has no choice but to be accomplished, you have to adapt and overcome. And that allows you to take a different perspective when you look at problems. And when we come back, everyone again wants to pigeonhole us and say, well, they're hard workers, they work well under stress. And I'm like, yes, but it's about what we're able to do. And in this situation, even with our company at Prepper Beef, it's that we just took a look at something and said, why are people making this so complicated? We can simplify the process. We can sort of stovepipe it and streamline it and apply the ingenuity that we learned under fire, if you will, for lack of a better word, but that you had, and then apply it in the civilian world. And we're real proud of being able to do all those things. And again, and just furthering the mission of just making America a better place to live.
I have had the pleasure of knowing several special operations guys, and you guys always think in a way that's really impressive to me. It's like big picture, but small picture, local, but global at the same time. The ability to sort of look at, I mean, the border, elections, inflation, and war, all in connection with community. So you're not a fan of Bill Gates, right?
No, I don't.
That's
I've been
I'm not
quite
a
the
fan either.
opposite of
He
the
seems like
man who
kind of
wants
a
to blot
jerk.
out the sun. Yes, no, he's not my
Yeah.
favorite guy. I don't think that he's an awful human being, but that's just me, maybe.
No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Um, his uh land grab is part of the and the land grab of China as well. That's part of what's motivated you guys to open um to start this company, right?
Well, I think so. Overall, the global, we'll call it the globalist viewpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of trying to unite the world by essentially crippling the resources of those who are successful nations until you've. So rather than a rising tide raises all ships, they have this: we're going to anchor you down so that until every other ship sort of rises with you. It's a forced stagnation of our own growth. And we've seen that whether it be the development of our natural resources, the development of our fossil fuel industries, other things like that. We have a need around the world for these things. I mean, energy is one of the greatest things we need, but right behind that is agriculture. And when you have available farmland being essentially locked down, what they're trying to do is manipulate you into multiple things. I mean, we look at it this way. So they're trying to, one, if China's buying up our farmland and we have less food, we have to either buy it from them or consume less. In other words, you're weakening people. There's a great propaganda
Mm-hmm.
against the health benefits of eating beef, right?
Yeah.
But there is nothing that's better for you than animal protein and helping you to develop strong bones, healthy muscle, right? So we can see that in our country that once we made great leaps in refrigeration technology, and the ability and capacity to create more and more cattle and slaughter them and push them around the country, that we saw stronger young men and women, that we saw less disease, that we saw an entire generation of people move from being, I mean, now we're fat, but before that, we became a strong community. One moment. So I think that there's this um, disconnect from that because obviously we've moved into these artificial foods and it's
Mm-hmm.
just become this gross thing where we're no longer healthy, right? But these are healthy products. And just because people have made them unhealthy and then they've created this media around it, I believe it's just a part of a general globalist ideal that we should be content with having minimal resources, with content with having a 15-minute city, content with having X amount of calories and getting your one steak a year. And I don't believe that the damage that they claim we're committing to the environment is any. It's just not true. These are just factually untrue things. China has been. I mean, they will continue to increase their output of carbon emissions. Long after we've been told to reduce it to the point where we have zero influence. Right now, we could we could cease to exist as a country and it wouldn't matter. So they're just, at that point, I have to look at it and say it's more about the psychological manipulation, if you will. And I think that making us miserable is just sort of a game for them.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, that feeds into lab grown meats and possibly like the spread of that propaganda that you just mentioned. Um, so as a way of like weakening or making things inconvenient for us, is that just going to keep getting worse? Like, what do we do in response to it?
So, everyone is, there's, when you have a problem, right? There's many uh, uh, you have to find a solution where you want to end up, right? And once you've defined where you want to end up, and everybody agrees that there's many methods to get there, but you have to pick the method that makes the most sense and that you have the resources for. I think that we have a different set of ideals of where we want to end up. So, for the average American capitalist, the idea is that we want everyone in the world to have everything that's amazing, right? And so, our idea is, how can we mass produce it and give it to you, but obviously within the constraints of limitations of resources and you know, if we're not using our water rights properly, you could over. So there's an ebb and flow to this, which is where our industry, the dried industry, really steps in, because we can turn around and in bumper crop years, turn around and save crops and save meat and proteins and other things like that for years when you have droughts and other things like that. That's a solution. That's one solution of many that needs to apply in order to basically give everybody the right to have access to the same kind of foods that made us strong, the kind of foods people deserve to have, quite frankly. And there's a lot of leaps and bounds that industries have taken that we are almost there. We're so close, right? But then I think you have this other group that says, hey, it's really hard for X group to get these resources. Let's use isms to turn the media against the idea of anyone having that product. And then what we'll do is get everyone happy with gruel.
Hmm.
And see, we've made everyone happy now.
Eat the
That's it.
bugs.
Right, and then they profit off of it, they gain control off of it, and it's taken out of your hands. We no longer have a mercantile class because you're left back with just a similar. I mean, who's going to be able to turn bugs into appetizing anything? First of all, it's disgusting. But
Yeah.
lab-grown meat, are you going to have your local farmer culturing lab-grown meat? I mean, that's a disgusting idea, first of all, but second of all, no. So we're talking about corporations having that control. And again, you get back to an idea of a globalist thing. So one by one, they attack things. It's similar to what they did when they created the coastal commissions in California to slowly gain control of shipping, of development, of where California is now become an ungovernable state. You cannot do anything in California right now. That's why businesses are fleeing. That's why crime is just through the roof. It's just insane, right? But they do this around the world. They've been doing it around the world. You've seen what happened in the European Union. You've seen what they've done to the farmers there. They're coming here in the U.S., and as you pointed out, starts with the land grab.
The treatment of farmers has been pretty mind blowing to me. That's what that's a part of the overall plan, like the idea that like you weaken a nation by going at their farmers, or it's like connected to climate change. I never have fully understood why that's happening. Why would you attack the food givers?
Well, I think it's, again, it's about control, right? So the
Yeah.
best way that I look at it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you reverse it. So, the first thing you need is oxygen, right? So if they can affect that, then whatever. But right now they can't. And then you have water, and they sort of control that in urban environments, but we've been able, again, through capitalism, to have bottled water and other things available. So food. Food is the base thing. They've already attacked everything else above Maslow's hierarchy of needs above food. So
Mm.
food is the next step. And if they can control food, and they can control the production of food, the consumption of food. And again, you see this almost like they created the problem so that they could offer
Mm,
the solution. So they made the food just absolutely horrible for you. And then they turned around and said, "See, look at what's happened. Diabetes is through the roof.
mm,
Heart disease is through the roof. Here's the solution now." And then you just mix in a little bit of global warming. You mix in a little bit of plastics polluting the earth. I mean, you can individually, all of these problems are easily fixed. These are not the problems. The problems are consumer habits, and that's through a lack of education and personal responsibility. I can't do anything about that. What I can do is look out for other responsible Americans who know what they want to put inside of their bodies. I don't need someone from the WEF. I don't need someone from any of the global organizations, the UN, coming in and telling me this is what we need to do to solve the climate crisis, when in reality they're letting China do whatever they want, India do whatever they want until a certain date 50 years from now, or 15 or whatever. It doesn't really matter because they're never going to comply anyway. Does anybody ever really think that China is going to comply and start cutting back on their emissions at any point?
mm. No, good, excellent point. So I got one more question for you here. My freeze dried beef arrives. Let's say 5 years from now. I open it up, throw it into a cast iron. What's the process there?
Okay, so the best way to do this is to basically boil water and then put whatever amount of beef you want inside of a bowl, and then pour the boiling water over it, and then let it just sit there for 15 minutes. Okay, and that's obviously depending on the size. You're going to want to pull it out and check it, but about 15 minutes. It never takes in any more water than was taken out of it. So if you left it there for a half an hour, obviously you want to remember that it's rehydrated food. Once you rehydrate it, it's going to be treated like meat. You're not going to want to leave meat lying around. But the point is, if you came back in a half an hour, it's not going to be mushy and whatever. It's only going to take in as much water as it did. I recommend, if you have it available, that you rehydrate it in bouillon. But the
Mm,
point is that once you have it rehydrated, you just take it and you can eat it, salt it, and eat it like it is, dip it in something, or you can add it to recipes. You can treat it like any other meat that you would have had sous vide and then
mm,
ready for you. So we sous vide it, and then we send it right into the freeze drying process. And once the sublimation process is done and all the water is taken out of it, it's just put in Mylar bags. It's got oxygen absorbers, moisture absorbers. It's sealed. It's good for 10 to 25 years. And once you open it, quite frankly, how you handle it, you can have it last up to another 10 years, depending on how you handle it. So even if you just wanted to open it halfway, but we have a feeling that once you open it, you're probably going to keep eating it. So beware of that.
oh man, I'm gonna go eat some meat right now.
There you go.
Jason, how can people find you? What can they look out for?
So obviously you can go to prepperbeef.com, but if you go to X, I am at real Jason Nelson. So real Jason Nelson, you can find me.
Your
Mostly I
X
just
page
talk.
is great, by the way.
Oh, do you have to,
You got a
I don't
good
know if any.
flow.
I don't. I have no idea. I write things on X, and then I kind of like comment on a few people. I try to read everything everybody says, but I'm not a prolific. I'm not on there as much as it looks like I am. I'm so busy, but I love interacting with people. You have no idea how many times I've sat and had lunch all over this country with people from X, and I genuinely love it. There are so many amazing people in this country, and it's my outlet. So, yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm not following you back. I'll make sure I do that.
Oh man. Well, I will look for you on there. We'll have you back in the future, man. It's been a real joy chatting with you.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.